close your eyes. Let the day release its final sigh. Somewhere beyond the window, the city is quieting, its streets painted in gold and gray, its sounds dissolving into the hum of the earth, preparing for rest. You can almost feel the warmth of the pavement cooling beneath invisible footsteps, the lamps flickering to life one by one, as if the stars themselves have descended to keep watch. The air at dusk is neither day nor night, a gentle in-between, a pause between breaths. It is the moment when everything becomes softer, when edges blur and thoughts begin to wander home. Shadows stretch long, slow, graceful, reaching across walls, over rooftops, across sleeping cars. They do not ask for attention, they simply exist, humble and loyal, following every movement with quiet devotion. But tonight, among the thousands of silhouettes walking through this tender light, there is one man who walks alone, a man who fears the very thing that follows him. He moves carefully as if the ground might betray his shape. His face is calm, yet there is a flicker of unrest behind his eyes. Every time the streetlight casts his figure across the cobblestones, he shifts away, trying to outpace his shadow. He tells himself it is only light, only physics. But something deeper stirs, a quiet dread of being followed by the parts of himself he cannot escape. He has spent years chasing perfection, chasing brightness, admiration, and the illusion of never being touched by darkness. To the world, he seems complete. His voice is steady, his smile unwavering, his presence warm and controlled. People see him as a beacon, someone who carries light wherever he goes. And perhaps, in some ways, he does. But even beacons tremble when the night grows silent. As the city exhales, his thoughts drift toward questions he has never dared to ask aloud. Why does light feel heavy when it never rests? Why do smiles ache when they are held too long? And why, even surrounded by glow, does he feel the faint pull of loneliness, a longing for something softer, something dimmer, something true? He pauses beneath a lamp. The glow pools at his feet, golden and gentle. His shadow stretches out like an echo, trying to reach him. For a brief second, he almost allows it. He almost steps closer to see what it wants to say. But the thought frightens him. So he takes a step back, then another, until the shadow fades beneath the next light. In that moment, he whispers to himself, "Maybe I don't need it. Maybe I'm better off without it." The wind answers with silence, and as the city folds itself into night, somewhere deep within his heart, a quiet question lingers, one that will follow him long after the streets fall asleep. What becomes of a man who loves the light, but cannot bear his own shadow? He had always believed that darkness was a flaw, not the kind that hides in alleyways or storms, but the kind that lingers within, the small, trembling part of a person that feels too much, doubts too often, dreams too deeply. From childhood, he was told that light meant goodness, and so he learned to chase it with all his heart. He trained himself to smile when sadness rose, to speak calmly when his chest ached, to shine even when he was burning. People loved him for it. They said his presence lifted rooms, that his laughter felt like sunlight through stained glass. When he entered a space, conversations brightened, worries softened, and for a moment the world seemed a little less cruel. They didn't see the effort behind his radiance, how carefully he crafted each smile, how precisely he hid the tremor in his hands. To them, he was balance itself, always composed, always kind, always bright. But brightness, when held too long, begins to sting. At night, when the city quieted and the masks of day dissolved, he often sat by the window, afraid of the reflection looking back. The room would dim around him, yet he would leave a small lamp burning, unable to face the simple stillness of shadow. In that soft half-light, he saw traces of what he tried to erase. The moments of anger, the unspoken envy, the weight of loneliness pressing against the edges of his heart. He thought if he ignored them long enough, they would disappear. Instead, they gathered, invisible but patient, waiting in the corners like loyal companions he refused to acknowledge. His friends praised him for his calm, never guessing how often his breath caught in his chest. His colleagues admired his control, never hearing the silent thunder in his thoughts. Even the ones he loved most never saw the nights when he pressed his palms together, whispering to himself to hold it together just one more day. And so, his shadow grew heavier the more he tried to escape it. Each laugh that wasn't real added another layer. Each compliment accepted without belief deepened the distance between the light he showed and the truth he hid. He began to fear any moment of stillness because stillness meant honesty, and honesty meant facing the dark. So he filled his days with noise, work, conversation, the constant rhythm of purpose. He mistook exhaustion for meaning and applause for peace. Sometimes when walking home, he would catch the outline of his shadow stretching across the pavement. It unnerved him, that quiet follower that mirrored his every move. To others, it was nothing. To him, it was the proof of imperfection. A reminder that no matter how bright he became, the darkness would always find him. So he learned to avoid the low light of evening, to stay under the brightest lamps, to walk streets where the glow was constant and forgiving. He carried his own light everywhere, a small lantern in his chest burning endlessly. But even lanterns need darkness to be seen. He didn't know it yet, but the brighter he shone, the more his light began to blind him. There were moments, brief, fragile ones, when he felt the fatigue of holding up the sun alone. He would pause, hand against his chest, and wonder why warmth felt so cold. Then, before the thought could deepen, he would smile again, tidy his breath, and return to the comfort of being admired. For a long time, that was enough. Or at least, it had to be. Because to look back at his shadow, to truly see it, felt like opening a door he wasn't sure he could close again. And so he kept walking toward the light, never realizing that every step forward only made his shadow longer. It happened on an evening that felt softer than the rest, the kind of dusk that holds its breath between day and night. The air shimmered faintly, as if the world itself were caught in thought. The man walked alone along the riverbank, the last rays of sunlight flickering across the water. It was the hour he usually dreaded most, when his shadow grew tall and undeniable beside him. But tonight, the light was strange, and his reflection wavered in the ripples like a question left unanswered. That was when he noticed a figure waiting at the edge of the bridge. The stranger's outline shimmered faintly, as though he were made of both light and its absence. His coat was silver gray, his voice low and melodic, not loud but certain, carrying the calm authority of someone who had all the time in the world. When he spoke, even the wind seemed to pause to listen. "You've been trying to outrun something," the figure said gently. "Something that never stops following you." The man froze. "You've been watching me." The stranger smiled, not cruelly, but knowingly. "I've been watching everyone who fears their own shadow. You carry yours like a burden, though it is only proof that you exist." The man frowned, uncertain whether to feel insulted or understood. "And who are you to speak of my shadow?" "I am a merchant," the stranger said, bowing slightly. "A collector of reflections, silhouettes, echoes, and forgotten selves. I offer freedom from the weight you cannot bear." The words hung in the air like perfume, tempting, impossible, sweet. The man studied him. The stranger's face was serene, illuminated by a faint glow that seemed to come from within. Around him, the air was oddly still. No wind, no movement, just a hush of expectation. "What kind of freedom?" the man asked, half curious, half defensive. The merchant stepped closer. His eyes reflected the river, endless and calm. "Freedom from doubt, from guilt, from the parts of yourself you hide away. I can take your shadow, every flaw, every mistake, every fear, and leave you in pure light, eternal brightness, eternal peace." The man's breath caught. It sounded impossible, and yet, wasn't that what he'd always wanted? To live without the dark hum of anxiety beneath his ribs? To be wholly light, wholly good? To never again feel the pull of sadness in the quiet hours? "How?" he whispered. The merchant extended a hand. "Simple," he said. "You give it to me. You will never see your shadow again. You will never be followed, never reminded of the darkness you've carried. You will live as one made entirely of light." The man hesitated. The word never shimmered between them like a spell. He glanced down at the ground, at the long, wavering shape beside him that had trailed his every step since he was a child. It didn't move now. It simply waited. It looked harmless, almost tender. But still, he felt the familiar unease rise. To be rid of it, of the guilt, the fear, the doubt, wasn't that what he had been praying for all along? "Will it hurt?" he asked. The merchant smiled faintly. "Only for a moment. Then there will be nothing but light." The man exhaled slowly, feeling something loosen inside him. He looked up at the sky, where the last traces of twilight faded into gold. For the first time, he imagined a world where he could walk freely, unshadowed, unburdened. "All right," he whispered. "Take it." The merchant nodded once, his eyes glinting with something ancient and unreadable. And as the wind rose softly around them, the man felt the faintest tug, like silk slipping away. And then, silence. When he looked down, the ground beneath him was bare. No outline, no darkness, only light. He walked beneath the quiet lamps, his footsteps soundless on the sleeping street. It was late, that hour when the city holds its breath, and yet the light seemed to know his name. It followed him tenderly, wrapping him in a halo too gentle to be real. People glanced his way as they passed, puzzled by something they couldn't name. Some looked twice, frowning, others whispered. But he did not understand, not yet. At first he felt light, not in body but in soul, as if he had been peeled free from a weight no one else could see. The night was cool, the air hummed softly against his skin. Every lamp flickered in rhythm with his steps, stretching his glow across the pavement. He looked down, expecting to find the familiar dark twin beneath him. There was nothing. He stopped walking. The light stopped too. No shadow. Not even the faintest outline. His shape stood unanchored, as though he were part of the light itself. He lifted a hand, turned it slowly, pale, almost translucent. The gesture left no darkness behind. At first he smiled, a strange, dazed smile. Perhaps it was a trick of the streetlights, he thought. Perhaps the world had become brighter in his absence. But when he turned a corner, the glow turned with him, obedient as breath. Then came the unease, soft at first, like a chill running across glass. The light clung to him too faithfully, bending when he bent, pausing when he paused. It wasn't following, it was holding. He walked faster, passing storefronts closed for the night. His reflection met him again and again in darkened glass, each image radiant, unblemished, unnatural. He pressed his hand to one window, searching for something human in the glow. Inside the reflection he seemed beautiful, weightless, almost divine, but he could not find himself in that light. It was too clean, too forgiving. Shadows, he realized, had always been proof of existence, the small darkness that proved a person stood between the world and its light. He whispered to the silence, "Where did you go?" The wind stirred gently, curling at his feet, offering no reply. He remembered his shadow as one remembers a friend who never asked to be thanked, always beside him, even in loneliness. A loyal witness. He wondered if it had grown tired, if it had decided to rest somewhere the light could not reach. When he reached the end of the street, the lamps dimmed. For a moment, the glow around him softened, uncertain. He took a deep breath and stood still, hoping the darkness might return. Even a sliver, a line, a faint smudge on the ground. But the night only deepened, folding him in light. He closed his eyes. In that brightness, he felt a quiet grief, not for what he had lost, but for what he had become, a man without a shadow, and therefore without weight. And the world, gently glowing, kept watching. Morning broke in soft gold, spilling gently across the city's mirrored windows. When he stepped out of his apartment, the light greeted him as though it had been waiting, rippling along the streets, pooling at his feet, wrapping him in that same strange radiance. By now, whispers had become stories, and stories had turned to wonder. The man without a shadow was no longer a quiet mystery of the night. He was a rumor turned flesh. At first, people adored him. They called him blessed, chosen, a bearer of light. In cafes, strangers left their tables to offer him seats. In parks, artists sketched his outline in trembling awe. Some reached out just to feel the air around him, to touch the space where darkness should have fallen. His absence had become a fascination, his glow a symbol of purity. He was invited everywhere, to rooftops and salons, to dinners that glittered with candlelight. Photographers begged for portraits. Reporters spoke of him as if he had stepped out of heaven's own threshold. The city of bright faces adored him, worshipped him even, and for a brief moment he let himself drift on their praise, warm, golden, intoxicating. But beneath admiration lay a strange kind of silence, an unease that breathed just behind the applause. Children would not approach him. At first he thought they were shy, but when he knelt and offered a gentle smile, their eyes widened with something older than fear. One little girl dropped her toy when he reached for it. She stared as though she'd seen the sun blink. Her mother hurried her away, whispering, "Don't stare, darling. It isn't polite." Dogs, too, reacted strangely. They would bark when he passed, hackles raised, as if trying to summon his missing half from the pavement. Some growled low, teeth bared, unwilling to let him near. One old shepherd refused to cross his path entirely, tugging at its leash, whining in quiet confusion. And mirrors, the city's countless mirrors, seemed unable to decide what to do with him, too. Sometimes his reflection was too bright to see, blurred by light like a photo overexposed. Other times it flickered, existing for a heartbeat, then vanishing as though even glass could not hold him. In one boutique, a mirror shattered when he stepped too close, scattering fragments of brilliance across the floor. The storekeeper gasped, whispering a prayer under her breath. He began to notice how conversation shifted when he entered a room. Smiles too polished, voices too soft. People stared a beat too long. They called him Angel, but in their eyes lingered something colder, a question they didn't dare to ask aloud. What kind of man loses his shadow? He walked through the city each day wrapped in light, but the longer it clung to him, the heavier it felt. Every compliment carried the faint taste of distance. Every invitation seemed a test. For all their praise, the bright faces of the city never truly met his gaze. They admired him from the safe comfort of their own shadows, their silent proof that they still belonged to the earth. And so, even surrounded by light, he began to feel the first soft echo of loneliness, the kind that hums just beneath beauty, patient and persistent, waiting to be heard. The days grew brighter, yet the man began to notice something missing, not from the sky, but from within himself. The light that once felt soft now pressed against him like glass. It shimmered on his skin, yes, but never sank in. When he stood beneath the sun, he could no longer feel its warmth, only its glare, a brightness without tenderness. He touched his arm, expecting that familiar living heat beneath the skin, but it was cool, almost distant. The more he bathed in the sun's glow, the colder he felt inside. It was as though warmth needed shadow to rest upon, and without one, the light had nothing to hold. He began to remember the old days, though not fondly. Back then, his shadow would curl quietly at his feet, breathing with him, shaping itself against the earth. He used to hate it, the way it clung, the way it reminded him of what he could never escape. But now, in its absence, he realized how much it had anchored him. The shadow had been his proof of belonging, the quiet thread between his body and the world. Now, there was only light, endless, perfect, and indifferent. At first, he tried to ignore the chill. He wore thicker coats, wrapped himself in scarves, stood by fires. But even when he pressed his palms close to the flames, they only reflected in his skin like painted light. Heat refused to enter him, as if he had become a surface instead of a soul. One evening, at a gathering in a glass-walled penthouse, the city's lights flickered like tiny suns below. He stood among people laughing, their shadows stretching long and soft behind them. Music drifted through the air, smooth, elegant, meant for warmth and ease. But as he watched them, something inside him tightened. Their laughter felt like the crackle of a hearth, alive, glowing from within. When someone handed him a drink, condensation beaded against the glass. He held it, expecting the coolness to spread, but felt nothing. Not cold, not warmth, just emptiness, as though sensation itself had left him. A woman beside him smiled. "You must love the light," she said. "You're always glowing." He tried to smile back, but the words slipped out before he could stop them. "It's not as warm as it looks." She laughed softly, thinking he was joking, but when she met his eyes, her smile faltered. There was a distance there, not between them, but within him, like a window left open on a winter night. Later, walking home, the air shimmered with streetlight. Each lamp crowned him in gold, each glow seemed to adore him. Yet none of it touched him. His breath fogged faintly in the air, though he could not feel the cold that caused it. And somewhere deep inside, he began to understand. Light without darkness is not warmth. It is exposure. Without shadow, there is nothing to soften the light, nothing to hold its tenderness. The sun, the fire, the human gaze, all become mirrors instead of touch. He realized then that his shadow had been his shelter. It had absorbed what was too harsh, carried what he could not bear. Now, stripped of it, he stood naked before the brilliance, gleaming, admired, and utterly alone. That night, when he lay in bed, the moonlight poured over him like silver frost. He could see the glow even with his eyes closed, but still, he could not feel its warmth. He turned toward the window and whispered to the night, "I gave away my darkness and lost my fire." It happened one quiet morning when the world outside was hushed beneath a veil of mist. The man stood before the tall mirror in his apartment, an old silver-framed relic that had always been honest with him. It had shown him smiles and sleepless eyes, youth and weariness, all with the same gentle precision. But that morning, something in its still surface felt different, expectant, as though it too had been holding its breath. He approached slowly. The room behind him was flooded with soft daylight, pale and even, as though the sun itself had forgotten how to cast a shadow. His reflection shone in the glass, but the longer he looked, the less he recognized what he saw. There he was, face calm, eyes luminous, skin glowing faintly as if carved from morning light. Every feature was precise, beautiful even. Yet something essential was missing. It took him a few heartbeats to realize what it was. Depth. There was no depth in his reflection, no contour, no soft darkness beneath the cheekbone, no gentle line under the jaw. His image hovered like a drawing with all the shading erased. The light seemed to flatten him into a single surface, radiant but hollow. He leaned closer. The reflection did the same, its eyes two quiet wells of brightness. But when he searched them for emotion, there was only emptiness, a gleam without soul. It was like looking into a lantern. The light was there, but the warmth was gone. He reached up and touched his own face. The reflection followed, perfectly synchronized. But his fingertips against his skin felt cold. He pressed harder, as if trying to summon the weight of himself, the texture of being real. Still nothing changed. A faint tremor passed through him. The mirror, too, seemed to quiver. For an instant, the light inside it flickered, and he thought he saw something beneath the brightness. A faint, ghost-like outline, a whisper of shadow trying to form. He blinked. It vanished. His breath misted against the glass. The fog spread across the mirror's surface, softening his reflection, giving it a momentary blur, and in that blur, he caught a glimpse of something familiar, the faint suggestion of depth, the return of imperfection, and strangely, it made him feel human. But as the mist faded, the smooth glow returned, pure and sterile. The man who stared back at him was flawless, yet lifeless, a candle with no flame. He stepped back, unease stirring beneath the calm surface of his thoughts. All his life, he had chased perfection, believing that purity would bring peace. But here it was, the dream realized, and it felt like silence inside a crystal jar. Brightness without contrast, perfection without pulse. He remembered the way his old shadow used to stretch and curl, how it gave depth to every gesture, how it followed him faithfully through joy and sorrow alike. It had always reminded him that he was more than his light, that he contained darkness too, and that it was this very contrast that gave shape to his existence. Now, without it, everything was surface. Everything was the same pale tone. He looked at the mirror one last time. The reflection looked back, glowing, immaculate, and unbearably empty. He whispered to it, almost tenderly, "You look like me, but you're not alive." For a moment, the light seemed to waver, a ripple of quiet protest. Then it steadied, smooth as glass. And in that stillness, the man understood what he had truly sold. Not just his shadow, but the depth that made him real. The night has settled now. The city quiets, the hum of motion fading into something softer, like a memory exhaling. Windows glow faintly, their light trembling against the dark, and somewhere beneath it all, the man sits alone by his window, bathed in a pale, silvery calm. He no longer chases sleep, nor flees from it. He simply sits, breathing. The room is still, filled only with the hush of distant wind and the slow rhythm of his breath. Now listen. Inhale. Light. Feel it enter gently, like dawn slipping through a half-open curtain. Let it rest in your chest, not burning, not blinding. Only quiet. Let it trace its way into the small spaces between your thoughts. Exhale. Shadow. Not darkness to be feared, but warmth returning home. Let it fall softly through you. The weight of the day, the noise of worry, the shapes of everything you could not fix. Watch them drift away as breath becomes mist and mist becomes peace. Inhale light, exhale shadow. Again. Inhale the cool glow of the moon, a tender brightness that does not demand. Exhale the hush of your own hidden depths, the soft gray of being human. The narrator's voice grows slower, like the tide at night. The words are no longer instructions, but waves, guiding the listener inward, where silence hums beneath thought. Feel how still the air becomes when you stop trying to hold it. Feel how the body loosens when you stop trying to perfect it. The man by the window lifts his eyes toward the night sky. The stars shimmer, distant yet kind. He wonders for a moment if they too have shadows, if even light must travel with its unseen twin. A small smile forms at the corner of his mouth. He understands now. To breathe is to balance light and shadow, to let both flow through without clinging to either. Inhale light, exhale shadow. You are not trying to become pure. You are not trying to erase what was. You are simply letting the glow and the dimness meet, just as night and dawn meet upon the horizon. Inhale, feel the breath rise, luminous and calm. Exhale, release into stillness, into ease, into the gentle truth that even the brightest stars are cradled by darkness. The man closes his eyes. The city sleeps. The mirror across the room catches only the faintest shimmer of light, soft, almost human again. One last breath. Inhale light, exhale shadow. And somewhere between them, between brightness and its echo, silence blooms. That is where rest begins. Morning came like glass. The light entered the room before sound did. Clean, silent, absolute. The man lay awake, though he had not truly slept. He had dreamed of mirrors, endless mirrors, each one reflecting only light upon light until the world folded into itself and disappeared. When he rose, the air itself seemed too bright to breathe. He moved to the window, letting the morning spill across his skin. And for the briefest moment, he thought he saw a flicker in the glass. Not a reflection, not quite. A shimmer, like a pulse hidden beneath the light. Then came the voice, soft at first, like a thought brushing against his ear. "Are you happy now?" He froze. The sound came from nowhere, yet everywhere. From the walls, the window, the very sunlight trembling through the curtains. He knew that voice. He had heard it once before, the night he sold what could not be measured, his shadow, to the man who called himself the Merchant of Reflections. He tried to steady his breath. "Yes," he whispered, uncertain whether he spoke to the air or to himself. "Yes, I am." The light around him flickered, as though it did not believe him. "Truly." The voice was smooth, patient, almost kind. "You have what you wanted, freedom from darkness. from imperfection, from doubt. You shine, just as you wished. He swallowed. His mouth felt dry. Yes, he repeated softer this time, and even to his own ears the word trembled. I shine. The light rippled again, forming faint ripples across the glass like the surface of water disturbed by breath. He could almost see a shape within it, the hint of a face too bright to bear detail, as if carved from living flame. Then why, said the voice, do your eyes look so dim? He turned away, pressing his palms against his temples. The air felt heavy despite its brightness. It's only the light, he said. Too much of it. It plays tricks. Ah, murmured the merchant, his tone like silk over glass. Light without shadow tends to do that. The words struck him deeper than he expected. He looked down, searching instinctively for the outline that used to follow him, the soft, dark echo that grounded him to the earth. But there was nothing. Just light pooling perfectly around his feet, silent, obedient, unbroken. The silence stretched. Somewhere, far beyond the walls, a bird sang, a brief, trembling note that felt almost out of place in the perfection of the morning. Are you happy? The voice asked again, slower this time, as though weighing the air with its question. He closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids the light burned red, pulsing in rhythm with his heart. He could feel his answer forming, fragile, uncertain. I don't know, he whispered at last. For a moment, everything stilled. Then the light dimmed just slightly, not dark, only softer, as though the world had exhaled. The voice seemed to smile. Good, it said. Now you are beginning to see. And just like that, the glow returned, perfect once more, but colder now, as if it were watching him. It began quietly, as most vanishings do, not with endings, but with slow distance. At first, his friends still called. They invited him to dinners, small gatherings, walks through the park when the sun began to tilt toward gold. But something in the way they looked at him had changed. Their smiles were polite, uncertain. When he laughed, their eyes flickered, as though his joy, once familiar, now came from too bright a place. He did not understand it at first. He thought perhaps they were simply distracted, caught in the soft machinery of their own lives. But one evening, sitting in a cafe surrounded by low lamps and murmuring voices, he noticed how people's gazes slid away from him. It was not rejection exactly, but retreat, the way eyes avoid a light that is too sharp to rest upon. When he spoke, his words felt like reflections instead of warmth, bouncing back instead of reaching others. Laughter, once shared, now echoed hollow in his chest. His friends began to answer more slowly, their tone cautious, their glances brief. And little by little, they stopped calling. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe he was simply changing, and change always unsettles others. But the truth whispered deeper. The brightness that surrounded him, the light that never bent, never softened, had begun to blind instead of illuminate. He could see it in small moments. When he entered a room, conversation would falter for a breath. When he offered a kind word, people smiled too quickly, too carefully, as if shielding themselves. Even in laughter, there was hesitation, a faint discomfort that shimmered beneath the surface. He missed the small, human things, the way people once leaned close to share secrets, the warmth of shadows overlapping, the sense of being part of something textured and imperfect. Now, every interaction felt like standing under a spotlight, exposed, admired, and entirely alone. One night, a friend, one of the few who still visited, spoke softly over tea. You've changed, she said. You're always glowing, but sometimes it's hard to look at you. Her words were not cruel, only sad. He nodded, unable to reply. The silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of the lamp and the faint rustle of leaves outside. He wanted to tell her that he missed the dark corners, the way shadows once softened faces, made eyes warmer, laughter deeper. That without them, everything felt too clear, too polished, too far away. But he said nothing. Words, he had learned, could not reach where warmth could no longer flow. After she left, he sat for a long while, the empty chair across from him gleaming faintly in the light. And for the first time, he truly saw the truth that had been waiting at the edges of his awareness. Brightness without softness becomes glare. He whispered the phrase aloud, and it seemed to settle in the air, gentle and undeniable. Light, he thought, was never meant to exist alone. It was meant to dance with shadow, to reveal and conceal in rhythm, to give shape to tenderness. Without that balance, even beauty becomes unbearable. He looked around the room, the untouched teacup, the smooth reflection on the table, the absence of warmth in the air, and he felt a quiet ache that light could not soothe. For the first time, he longed not to shine, but simply to glow with others, to be seen not for his brightness, but for his warmth. Outside, the city lights flickered in the distance, each one shimmering just enough to remind him that even light, when alone, trembles. The road home was quieter than he remembered. It curved through fields that once shimmered with wheat, now pale and still beneath the noon light. The air smelled faintly of dust and memory, that strange sweetness that only time can create. He hadn't been here in years. Yet, as he walked past the old gate, the hinges sighed the same way they always had, as though greeting him in a tired but familiar voice. The house stood unchanged, small, whitewashed, edges softened by age. The paint had faded to the color of worn parchment. The windows glowed faintly, not from lamps, but from sunlight spilling through the leaves outside. And though the world had moved on, the walls seemed to breathe with an old, living quiet. He stepped inside. It was cooler there. The room smelled of earth and rain, shadows that had settled gently into the corners, content to rest. The air carried whispers, the sound of laughter echoing through forgotten summers, the creak of the floor where his father once paced at night, the rustle of curtains that had danced in the breeze. He paused before one wall in particular. When he was a boy, he had spent hours here, watching his shadow move along it, waving, shrinking, stretching. It had been a game, simple and innocent, yet profound in a way he could not have understood then. His shadow had been his first companion, silent, loyal, always there. Now he stood before that same wall, radiant and empty. The surface glowed evenly, unbroken. No outline followed him. No soft darkness leaned against the light. The walls remembered his shadow, even if the world did not. He ran his hand along the cool plaster. It felt like touching the edge of something sacred, something lost. He could almost feel the faint hum of what used to be, the gentle presence of contrast, the rhythm of light meeting dark. Outside, the trees whispered in the wind. He stepped into the yard, where the ground sloped down toward a cluster of old oaks. Their branches reached wide, weaving sunlight into scattered patterns across the grass. He sat beneath them just as he once had, half in sun, half in shade. The light dappled his face in moving fragments, the warmth on one side, the cool hush on the other. For the first time in months, he felt balance, not the blinding clarity of constant brightness, but the quiet harmony of opposites coexisting. He closed his eyes. The breeze carried the scent of moss, soil, and childhood, that tender, unguarded time when the world did not need to be perfect to feel whole. He remembered the laughter of friends, the comfort of dusk, the way night used to arrive like a friend instead of an ending. And as he sat there, he realized what he had been missing all along was not the shadow itself, but the feeling of belonging it brought, the sense that every light needed a place to rest. He looked up at the trees swaying gently, their leaves shimmering between brightness and shade. "You remember me," he whispered. The leaves rustled softly in reply, their movements tracing shapes of light and darkness across his hands. He smiled then, not with radiance, but with warmth. For a moment, under that ancient rhythm of sun and shadow, he felt almost human again. He sits by the window, staring into the night that no longer knows how to embrace him. The sky is pale, not dark, not light, but emptied of both. Once, stars used to glimmer like thoughts unspoken. Now they flicker faintly, as if unsure whether they still belong to the world. He breathes in, hoping the air will taste of dreams. It does not. It feels sterile, clean, too bright even in its chill. There was a time when closing his eyes led him to soft places, rivers of memory, the laughter of unseen companions, the quiet voice of his mother calling him in for supper. Now, when he closes his eyes, there is only white silence, a silence that hums like a wound. He whispers to himself, though the words feel foreign, "Do I still dream?" No answer comes, only the faint echo of his own voice dissolving into the thin light. He remembers a night long ago, the moon behind clouds, the crickets weaving sound into the dark. Back then, he thought darkness was loneliness. Now he sees it was mercy, a soft veil that allowed the mind to wander, to imagine, to rest. Light without its shadow offers no place to hide, no room to breathe. His hands tremble slightly as he cups them before him, pretending there's warmth between them. There isn't. The room glows, but nothing feels alive. He wonders when it began, this fading of dreams. Perhaps it started when he stopped listening to the night, when he began fearing silence, when he told himself that peace must always shine. The wind outside sighs against the glass, carrying with it a hint of something older, perhaps the whisper of the world before the endless day began. For a brief second, he imagines a faint darkness passing over his heart, like a cloud drifting before the sun. It feels right, soft, forgiving. He closes his eyes again, and in that fragile gesture, he almost sees something. A child running barefoot across grass, chasing shadows for fun. The image flickers, brief but tender. His throat tightens. "I forgot how to dream," he murmurs, voice breaking. "I traded it for light." The night answers with a silence so complete it feels sacred. The light dims a little, not gone, but gentler, as if it too mourns what has been lost. He leans back, exhausted, allowing the faint hum of the world to fade into stillness. In the half-breath between waking and sleep, he feels something shift, a memory of darkness that does not frighten, but soothes. Somewhere deep inside, a small part of him whispers back, "Dreams return only when light learns to rest." And for the first time in many years, he lets the silence cradle him. That night, sleep finds him like a long-lost friend. Slow, hesitant, but real. It comes not as a descent, but as a soft unraveling. The light that had once held him captive begins to thin at the edges, folding gently into shades of blue and silver. He feels weightless, as though his thoughts have loosened their grip on him. For the first time in years, he is not afraid to close his eyes. He drifts into a dream that feels older than memory. At first, there is nothing but quiet. Then, a shimmer of movement, faint, delicate, like moonlight caught on a still pond. Out of that pale reflection, a figure emerges. It walks toward him slowly, barefoot, steps soundless on the glassy ground. He knows the figure before he can name it. It is his shadow. It moves with ease, not bound by gravity or light, but flowing, like smoke given form. Its edges breathe, pulse, expand. And it smiles, a simple, calm smile that fills him with something he cannot describe. He wants to speak, to ask where it has been, but words dissolve before they leave his lips. The shadow raises a hand, as if to hush him. Its touch does not feel cold. It feels like dusk, gentle, cool, forgiving. They stand together in silence for a while. Around them, the dream deepens. The sky turns indigo. Stars flicker into being like thoughts reawakened. A soft wind brushes past, carrying the scent of rain and soil, the smell of the world when it remembers how to breathe. The man looks around, astonished by the beauty of it. He had forgotten what darkness could be. Not absence, but presence. Not emptiness, but space. Vast, nurturing, infinite. In this darkness, colors breathe, sounds bloom. Every heartbeat echoes softly, like ripples in water. The shadow gestures for him to walk. Together they move across the dream's horizon, where mountains glow faintly and rivers reflect the night sky. He feels both young and ancient. With every step, the brightness that had blinded him fades into something tender, a light that comes from within, not from above. He realizes that the shadow is not a stranger. It is the part of him that had waited patiently, the side that needed silence to speak, the one that understood sorrow as a kind of wisdom. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. "I thought I lost you." The shadow's smile widens, its shape flickering softly in the dark. "You cannot lose what you are," it replies, though no sound is heard, only felt. He closes his eyes and lets that truth sink in. For the first time, he dreams not of light chasing dark, but of both existing, side by side, breathing together. In the quiet of that dream, the man's heart begins to remember its rhythm. And somewhere far away, dawn forgets to arrive. The dream deepens, folding around him like a soft cloak. The sky overhead is no longer merely dark. It is alive with muted colors, the edges of shadows trembling with quiet motion. The man walks slowly, aware of every step, until he stops and turns to the figure that has followed him all this way, his shadow. It pauses, hovering just beyond the reach of light, yet close enough that he can feel its presence as if it were a gentle pulse against his skin. And then, without moving its lips, the shadow speaks, not as a sound, but as a resonance inside him, a soft vibration that touches thought directly. "You threw me away," it says. The words are calm, neither accusing nor bitter, but firm in their clarity. "Because you feared being seen, because you thought I would reveal what you could not bear, but I was not your enemy. I was the part that listened." He feels a jolt, a quiet ache in his chest. He remembers the nights he hid from mirrors, the times he smiled through exhaustion and fear, believing that perfection meant erasing what he could not control. And yet, here is the truth, breathed back to him from the form that never left. He had abandoned the part of himself that understood him best. I thought I needed light to be whole," he whispers, voice trembling like leaves in a late wind. "I thought shadows were weakness." The shadow shimmers softly, as if brushing the air with a gentle hand. Weakness? Perhaps, but also wisdom. I was the quiet that held your fears without judgment. I was the place where your heart could speak without echo. You needed me, even when you did not see it. He bows his head, feeling a wave of realization wash over him. All the brightness that had once seemed freedom had been hollow. People admired him, but could not reach him. Light had carried him forward, yes, but without the grounding of shadow, it had only carried him away from himself. The shadow moves closer, curling around him like a ribbon of dusk. "Do you see now? Darkness is not absence, it is space. Space to rest, to think, to feel. Without it, light becomes a glare, and the heart grows tired of its own brilliance." He inhales slowly, feeling the words settle into the small spaces inside him that had been frozen for so long. "I forgot how to listen," he murmurs. "I forgot how to let life exist in the quiet places." The shadow seems to nod, a subtle ripple of motion that carries warmth despite its form. Listening is the soul's work. Without it, you may shine, you may be admired, but you are not alive. You are only a reflection. Tears gather, not from fear, not from grief, but from recognition. The deep, unhurried acknowledgement of what he had lost. He closes his eyes and breathes, feeling the embrace of something he had believed was gone forever. "I understand," he says, voice firmer now. "I see what I gave away." The shadow spreads gently around him, neither swallowing nor overpowering, simply being. "Then let us walk together again," it says, "not as master and servant, not as fear and avoidance, but as two parts of one being. Light and dark, inseparable, alive." And in that moment, the man feels the first true pulse of peace he has known in years, the steady, soft rhythm of a heart remembering itself. The dream hums around him, carrying him forward. And for the first time, he does not fear the night, because he knows that in the darkness, his voice and the shadows have always been listening. The man walks slowly through the dreamscape, the ground beneath him soft as clouds, each step a gentle sigh of motion. The stars above pulse faintly, as if breathing in time with him, casting silver rivers across the horizon. His shadow moves beside him, flickering and fluid, sometimes close, sometimes just beyond reach. He stretches out his hand, yearning to touch it, to hold what he had cast aside so long ago. For an instant, the shadow leans toward him. The edges shimmer, inviting, as if it remembers every warmth it once offered. He moves closer, fingertips trembling with quiet anticipation. The light that had always followed him faithfully glows around him now, subtle, lingering. But it is stubborn, unwilling to bend, unwilling to yield to the dark he longs to embrace. His hand reaches fully, brushing the shape that had been part of him since childhood. And in that moment, the light intervenes. The shadow dissolves at his touch, breaking apart into countless glimmers that scatter across the dreamlike expanse. The fragments shimmer briefly like tiny stars, then vanish into nothingness, leaving a soft, aching emptiness where connection should have been. He stands frozen, heart tightening, feeling the absence more acutely than any presence. And yet he does not collapse in sorrow. There is no grief here that feels heavy or bitter. Instead, there is recognition, the quiet acknowledgement of what has been lost, the clear, sharp truth of his own choices, and the gentle wisdom that comes from seeing them. Tears roll slowly down his cheeks, unhurried, tracing silent paths through the pale glow. He does not wipe them away. He does not speak. He lets them fall, letting each drop mark the understanding that brightness alone cannot comfort, cannot reach, cannot complete. The light surrounds him perfectly, unwavering and cold, and he realizes that it has always been faithful to the wrong part of him, to the shell, not the soul. In the silence, the world hums softly. The fragments of the shadow that once were swirl faintly in the corners of his vision, teasing memory, suggesting possibility. He breathes deeply, letting the recognition settle into the spaces of his chest. He sees now that reunion is not merely the act of touching, but the understanding of absence, the embrace of what cannot be forced back, the acceptance of imperfection and limitation. He whispers to the empty air, voice soft as dusk, "I understand you. I see what I lost. I know now that I cannot possess you fully." And perhaps that is not the point. The dream hums around him, carrying the faint echoes of what had been. The light remains, constant and unwavering, but his gaze has shifted. He is no longer seeking to overpower it, to reclaim what was beyond reach. He simply allows the space to exist, the delicate balance between presence and absence, light and shadow, longing and acceptance. And in this quiet understanding, he feels something tender stir. It is not the shadow returned, not yet, but it is the first pulse of wisdom, the soft rhythm of humility and insight, the recognition that true reunion begins within, with the acknowledgement of what was lost and the willingness to move forward with gentleness and care. He sits, letting the dreamscape cradle him, letting the scattered glimmers fade into peace. And for the first time in years, he feels the soft weight of his own being, neither blinding nor hollow, neither lost nor fully found, simply alive. The room is still, yet alive with quiet possibility. The soft hum of the night lingers like a gentle tide, and the listener is invited to rest within it, to sink slowly into the rhythm of the breath. Close your eyes. Allow your body to release the tension it has carried. Let your shoulders soften, your jaw loosen, your hands rest in stillness. This is your time, a space where judgment fades and only presence remains. Inhale what you've denied. Feel it enter softly, like a gentle stream flowing through the crevices of your heart. Inhale the forgiveness you withheld from yourself. Inhale the compassion you forgot to offer. Let it rise through your chest, expanding with ease, filling spaces you thought were empty. Exhale what you no longer need. Release the weight of regrets, the burdens of past mistakes, the words unsaid and the thoughts that haunt. Let them drift out of your body with each breath, dissolving into the quiet air. Imagine them melting like mist under morning sun, leaving only clarity and softness behind. Inhale what you've denied. Breathe in patience for yourself. Breathe in the gentle acceptance that life is neither perfect nor predictable, that every misstep carries its own lesson, that every shadow has a place in the light. Let the warmth of understanding settle inside your chest. Exhale what you no longer need. Let go of fear, of striving to be flawless, of clinging to expectations that do not serve you. Feel the tension unspooling from your limbs, the tightness in your heart, softening with every outward breath. Inhale what you've denied. Invite in the parts of yourself that have been hidden, neglected, or dismissed. The quiet dreams, the gentle hopes, the tender instincts that have waited patiently for acknowledgement. Allow them to bloom within you, silent and radiant. Exhale what you no longer need. Release comparison, judgment, and the endless chase for approval. Let them float away, leaving only space for your own voice to resonate. Inhale softly, deliberately, fully. Exhale slowly, completely, without resistance. Imagine your breath as a river, flowing freely, carrying away what weighs you down and bringing back what nourishes your spirit. With every inhale, the self softens. With every exhale, the heart expands. Inhale what you've denied. Exhale what you no longer need. Allow the rhythm to become natural, unhurried. Feel the gentle pulse of life in your chest. Notice the calm that arises from forgiveness, not as a forced act, but as a returning, gentle acknowledgement of your own humanity. Here, in this quiet space, you are free. Free to rest, free to release, free to be wholly yourself. The breath carries you, the silence cradles you, and the stillness allows you to simply exist. Inhale what you've denied. Exhale what you no longer need. And with each cycle, feel yourself dissolving into peace, as though the light and shadow within you are meeting, harmonizing, and resting together. The sun dipped low, spilling amber across the horizon, and the world seemed to hold its breath between day and night. The man stepped onto the path that led through the fields, the tall grasses swaying gently around him, brushing against his legs like soft whispers. Each step pressed into the earth with quiet purpose, a rhythm that matched the rise and fall of his own heartbeat. Twilight draped itself over everything, neither fully bright nor fully dark. Shadows stretched long and tentative, merging with the lingering light. He walked slowly, allowing the shifting colors to wash over him, to settle inside the hollow spaces he had carried for so long. Here, at this meeting of day and night, he felt the world acknowledging him in its gentle balance. A soft wind whispered through the field, teasing the edges of the grasses and ruffling the hair at his temples. The sound was delicate, almost musical, and he found himself breathing in time with it. Inhale. The air carries warmth, the scent of earth and distant rain. Exhale. Let go of weight, let go of worry. Let the rhythm of steps and breath guide him forward. He noticed how the shadows seemed to dance lightly around him, neither chasing nor fleeing. They welcomed him. For the first time in years, he felt no fear of their presence. They were companions, subtle and steady, reflecting what light could not. And the light, softened by the twilight, no longer burned. It was gentle now, offering guidance instead of command. Every step became meditation. The soil beneath his feet was firm but yielding, each footprint a quiet testament to movement, to persistence, to being alive in this delicate moment between contrasts. He could hear the soft crunch of the earth, the distant rustle of trees, the faint call of a bird settling for night. Each sound mingled with the pulse of his heart, a symphony composed of patience and presence. As he walked, memories surfaced, fragments of childhood afternoons spent chasing shadows across these same fields, the soft laughter of friends long gone, the hush of evenings when stars first appeared like pinpricks of hope. He breathed them in, letting them fill the empty places inside him, each one a gentle reminder that life had never truly abandoned him. He had merely been afraid to meet it fully. The horizon deepened into richer hues, the mingling of gold, rose, and violet, reflecting the unity of opposites. Light and shadow, warmth and cool, seen and unseen, all moving together, interwoven. He realized with quiet certainty that this was the path he had been seeking. Not to banish the dark, not to chase endless brightness, but to walk in balance, letting each step honor both sides of himself. And so he continued, footfall after footfall, breath after breath, immersed in the soft rhythm of dusk, letting the fields carry him home. not just across the land, but into the heart of his own returning. As he continued along the winding path, the man noticed figures emerging from the soft haze of twilight. They were wanderers, moving slowly, deliberately, as if the world itself had given them permission to take each step with care. There was no urgency in their motion, no rush to arrive anywhere. They carried themselves lightly, yet with a quiet depth that seemed to anchor them to the earth. He approached one, a woman with eyes like shaded pools, reflecting both light and shadow within their depths. She smiled gently as he neared, and he felt no need for words. She nodded, a subtle acknowledgement, as though recognizing the same long journey he had undertaken, a passage through fear, through longing, through the ache of absence. Another appeared, a man leaning lightly on a staff carved from an old branch. His presence was calm, deliberate, and as the man drew closer, he sensed the story woven into every careful movement. He did not speak, yet his expression told of burdens carried without resistance, pain transformed into patience, loss softened by acceptance. These wanderers did not shy away from darkness, they embraced it. It draped over their shoulders like a cloak, gentle but substantial, moving with them in rhythm. They did not fear the absence of light, nor did they seek constant illumination. They understood, as he was beginning to, that darkness was not emptiness, but depth, a space where reflection and growth could unfold naturally. He walked among them for a while, listening to the quiet murmur of their steps, the subtle rustle of their garments in the wind, the soft cadence of breathing synchronized with the evening air. It was as if every sound was a note in a slow, meditative symphony, one that invited him to slow, to soften, to blend with the rhythm of living without needing to dominate it. One of the wanderers reached out a hand, not demanding connection but offering presence. He took it cautiously, feeling a warmth that was neither intrusive nor overwhelming. It was the warmth of recognition, the unspoken understanding that they all carried shadows, yet walked without being consumed by them. There was a quiet courage in this balance, a humility that shone brighter than any constant light could achieve. The man realized that he had been afraid not of shadows themselves, but of their honesty. Shadows did not pretend, they did not promise perfection. They simply were. And in their being, he could sense freedom. Freedom to exist fully without the need to conceal, to illuminate, to perform. He continued with them for some time, sharing in the silence that spoke volumes. Their presence softened the edges of his own light, allowing him to feel its warmth without being blinded. Every step became a lesson in coexistence, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, presence and absence, all moving in harmony, all vital, all alive. As night settled deeper across the fields, he understood something profound. The journey home was not just toward a place, but toward the understanding that living fully meant walking with others who carry their pain gently, who embrace both darkness and light, and who teach without words that balance is the truest form of illumination. And with each step, he felt the weight of solitude ease, replaced by a calm certainty that shadows are not enemies and light is not enough alone. Together they formed the pulse of life, steady and unhurried, inviting him to continue walking quietly, fully, and at peace. The man walks on, the path unfolding like a ribbon of quiet beneath his feet. The fields of dusk have softened into deeper shades, a gentle twilight where light and shadow merge seamlessly. Each step brings him closer, not to a destination, but to understanding, to the subtle rhythm of coexistence he has long sought. He feels the cool touch of evening brushing against his skin, the warmth of fading sunlight lingering on his shoulders. In this delicate meeting, he begins to sense something he had forgotten, that peace is not found in the absence of darkness, but in the embrace of it. Every shadow, every quiet fold of the world holds a lesson, patience, humility, depth. And light, bright as it may be, is not whole without its partner. As he walks, the memory of his old fear surfaces, the relentless pursuit of illumination, the desire to shine without interruption, the constant need for approval and admiration. He had believed that by removing his shadow, he could be perfect, complete. But perfection had been hollow, a brittle radiance that could not warm or comfort. Now he sees differently. Shadows do not diminish, they frame, they cradle, they give shape to the brightness. In their subtle presence, light finds meaning. In their quiet, he discovers patience. And in the gentle sway of night beside day, he feels balance, a harmony he had long thought impossible. He closes his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. Inhale light, exhale shadow. Inhale shadow, exhale light. Each breath carries a gentle recognition that to be whole is to accept duality, to allow the self to exist in layers, in contrasts, in tender complexity. He understands now that escaping darkness is not liberation, it is avoidance. True freedom comes when one walks beside the night as naturally as one walks toward the dawn. The wind stirs the grasses, and with it comes a subtle, comforting hum. It whispers the wisdom of the earth, of the quiet spaces between sound and silence. The man feels it sink into him, a soft pulse aligning with his heartbeat. He is learning the language of balance, how to be present without forcing, how to shine without blinding, how to rest with intention without being consumed. He looks to the horizon where the last traces of sun melt into indigo. The sky is neither fully bright nor fully dark, yet it is complete. And in that completeness, he sees a reflection of himself. No longer a man chasing perfection, no longer afraid of shadows, but a being who carries both light and dark with quiet grace. To be whole is to be both candle and night, he whispers to the wind, letting the words settle like seeds in the soil of his heart. Each syllable carries understanding, a calm acceptance that life is not an all-or-nothing pursuit, but a continuous, gentle negotiation between opposing forces. With every step forward, he feels the pulse of this new awareness. Shadows no longer threaten, they guide. Light no longer blinds, it illuminates. He walks not toward mastery, not toward perfection, but toward harmony, the deep, unhurried peace that arises when one ceases to fight either side and simply moves with both. The night embraces him softly, and the candle of his being flickers warmly within, steady, alive, whole. The man pauses at the edge of the field, where the grasses bend gently beneath the soft sigh of the evening wind. The horizon is a quiet blur, neither sharp nor glaring, a meeting place where day leans into night. He breathes slowly, each inhale a wave, each exhale a gentle release, feeling the rhythm of the earth beneath him. He realizes something tender, almost imperceptible at first. He does not seek light anymore. He seeks warmth, not the harsh, unrelenting brightness that once blinded him, but the gentle pulse that rests within, steady and reassuring. It is the warmth of understanding, of presence, of quiet acceptance. Around him, shadows sway, not threatening, not cold, but alive, companions that stretch and breathe alongside him. The soft hum of the evening fills the space between steps, the whisper of grasses, the subtle rustle of leaves, the distant echo of a river moving in slow, deliberate arcs. Every sound carries meaning, but no pressure. Every movement reminds him that life unfolds in pauses, in stillness, in the subtle moments he had once overlooked. He closes his eyes, letting the world recede into gentle hues of indigo and silver. Breath becomes his anchor. Inhale warmth, exhale tension. Inhale acceptance, exhale fear. Each cycle carries him deeper into presence, teaching him that true illumination is not in shining outward but in settling inward. Memories rise softly, fragments of old days when he chased brilliance at the expense of his own heart. Faces, laughter, fleeting shadows, all now seen with tenderness, not regret. He feels the weight of old longing lighten, replaced by a calm acknowledgement that what is gone need not be mourned endlessly. What remains is enough. Warmth, reflection, connection, balance. The quiet settles further, wrapping around him like a soft cloak. He listens to the cadence of his own heartbeat, slow and patient, a gentle reminder that life carries on without haste, without demand. The stars begin to appear, tentative sparks of silver in the deepening sky, and he notices that their glow is soft, not blinding. He smiles, a smile free of fear or striving, a simple recognition of presence. The narrator's voice slows, inviting the listener into the same stillness. Feel the warmth you carry. Let the shadows comfort you. Let the light guide you without pressure. Allow the heart to rest in its gentle rhythm. He breathes in the calm, exhaling all striving. Inhale warmth. Exhale longing. He is no longer chasing perfection, no longer fearing absence. He walks gently, anchored in the tender realization that life is not about endless illumination, but about the steady, sustaining pulse of being, warm, alive, whole. In this quiet moment, the man feels the harmony of light and shadow, heart and mind, self and world. And for the first time in years, he rests fully, breathing in the warmth that has always been waiting, deep within. The path wound through the quiet valley, twilight brushing the hills with gentle strokes of indigo and gold. The man walked slowly, each step deliberate, carrying within him the calm certainty he had cultivated through long nights and meditative walks. He knew now that the journey was not about fleeing from himself, nor seeking perfection, but about reclaiming what had always been part of him, his shadow. As he moved through the soft glow of dusk, a figure appeared at the edge of the path. The merchant of reflections, once mysterious and unsettling, now seemed tempered by time. His face was lined, the sharpness of his eyes softened into quiet understanding. The air around him carried neither threat nor urgency, only a steady, gentle presence that mirrored the man's own slow pulse. The man paused, heart steady, but tender. He had imagined this moment countless times in restless nights and reflective days, wondering if he would find the courage to ask and whether the merchant would even remember him. And now, here he was, not demanding, not rushing, simply standing, a witness to what had been and what could be restored. "Merchant," he said softly, voice carrying neither accusation nor desperation, only honesty. "I have come to reclaim what I lost." The merchant studied him quietly, the long shadows of the valley stretching between them. "You have traveled far," he said, voice low and warm, edged with the wisdom of years. "And yet, you return not to beg, but to understand." "I want my shadow back," the man continued, each word deliberate, measured. "Not because I fear the dark, but because I have learned its value. I wish to walk whole, to carry both light and shade within me." The merchant's eyes softened further, and a small smile curved his lips. "Many come seeking light alone," he murmured. "Few return to claim what they once rejected. You have walked with patience, with reflection, with humility. That is why your shadow awaits you still." He gestured to a quiet space where the air shimmered subtly, neither bright nor dark, a place suspended between presence and absence. The man stepped forward, heart open, feeling the gentle pull of something familiar, the echo of himself he had once discarded in fear. He did not rush. He did not demand. He simply breathed, letting the rhythm of his heartbeat guide him toward reunion. The merchant watched, silent, as the man reached out with care and intention. There was no hurry, no struggle, only a quiet recognition of what had been lost and a soft acceptance of what was about to return. The valley held its breath. The wind whispered through grasses and leaves, carrying the tender promise of restoration. "You understand now," the merchant said finally, voice like soft earth, "that light alone is not enough. That to live fully, to be truly seen, one must walk in balance. And balance is born of both giving and reclaiming, of letting go and embracing what has waited patiently for your return." The man nodded, a gentle acknowledgement, ready to meet himself again, whole, present, and free. The valley lay quiet around them, twilight folding gently over the hills, the soft hum of evening wind threading through the grasses. The man stood before the merchant of reflections, heart steady but attentive, feeling the weight of anticipation without tension. He had traveled far, inward and outward, learning the subtle language of light and shadow, and now he understood that the moment of reunion carried its own sacred cost. The merchant regarded him with calm eyes, a knowing smile touching the corners of his lips. "The price," he said softly, voice like smooth wood, "is not gold nor coin, nor token of worldly measure. The price is surrender. Surrender. The word settled in the man's chest like a gentle pulse. Not defeat, not relinquishment in fear, but surrender in trust. The quiet act of yielding to life, to understanding, to the full spectrum of being. He realized that he had long sought control, tried to polish his light to perfection, and had chased shadows as if they were threats to be banished. Now he saw the path differently. Wholeness could only arrive through release, through quiet acknowledgement of what was, what had been, and what always could be. He sank to his knees on the soft earth, letting the fading light warm his face. Hands rested lightly upon his thighs, shoulders softened, and his breath slowed into a deliberate rhythm. Inhale, exhale, a gentle tide of presence. Eyes closed, he allowed the surrender to flow, not as a task, but as a natural unfolding. He welcomed the fullness of himself, the brilliance that once dazzled, the shadows he had feared, the quiet spaces in between where wisdom lived. The merchant's smile deepened, patient and serene. To surrender is to stop fighting what you are, to release the need to control light or dark, joy or fear. To allow both to exist within you, in harmony, is the gateway to wholeness. The man breathed in deeply, imagining the shadow he had given away long ago, feeling its contours, its gentle presence, its patient waiting. And he breathed out slowly, releasing all traces of anxiety, pride, and striving. Each exhale carried away remnants of separation, of longing, of the belief that he could only be complete through perfection. Each inhale drew in acceptance, presence, and the quiet warmth of integration. In the stillness, he sensed the shadow returning, not as something forced, not as a borrowed companion, but as a part of himself awakening. It brushed softly against him, like a familiar breeze, settling into the spaces his light had previously occupied alone. No longer separate, no longer feared, it existed in balance, neither dominating nor fading, simply harmonizing with the man's being. The merchant watched quietly, the valley listening, the wind holding its breath. Wholeness is not given, he murmured. It is remembered. It is claimed through surrender, through presence, and through the patient willingness to meet yourself fully. The man remained kneeling, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, eyes closed, and a soft smile forming. In the warmth of surrender, he felt the first true pulse of complete being. Light and shadow flowed together, steady and alive, and he knew, in the quiet certainty of his own breath, that he was finally whole. And as the night deepened, wrapping the valley in gentle indigo, the man's heartbeat mirrored the soft rhythm of the world, balanced, tender, and free. The valley lay in quiet repose, the final traces of twilight melting into a deep, gentle indigo. The man remained kneeling, chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, breathing with a calm that had been earned through long journeys inward and outward. The air was soft, alive with the subtle whispers of night, carrying the scent of earth and grass, of distant rain yet to fall. And then, as if drawn by the stillness itself, the shadow returned. It did not creep along the ground beneath him as before, nor did it loom apart, separate and unapproachable. Instead, it unfolded within him, settling gently into the spaces of his being. A warmth arose where once only light had burned cold, a quiet presence that neither threatened nor demanded, but simply was. He felt it first as a soft pulse in his chest, a subtle rhythm that harmonized with his own heartbeat. Then, as breath followed breath, as awareness met awareness, the shadow expanded into the corners of his mind, the folds of memory, the tender edges of emotion he had long left untouched. It was as if every hidden thought, every unspoken sorrow, every gentle longing that had once frightened him had quietly returned, welcomed, and integrated. There was no rush, there was no drama, only the soft, profound certainty that he was whole, not because darkness had disappeared, not because he shone without flaw, but because both light and shadow now lived within him in harmony. The brilliance he had once prized was tempered by depth. The fears he had once feared were softened by recognition. The fullness of being did not burn or blind. It illuminated gently from the inside out. He lifted his eyes to the fading stars, seeing them reflected not only in the sky, but in the quiet spaces of his own heart. In each twinkle, he recognized the balance he had long sought, the interplay of presence and absence, of clarity and mystery, of joy and tenderness. The shadow within him whispered softly, not as accusation, not as threat, but as companion. "You are complete, not despite me, but with me." A gentle warmth spread through his body, the merging of light and dark forming a calm, sustaining pulse. It was the pulse of awareness, of compassion, of understanding. He felt his own breath deepen, slow, expand, carrying with it the recognition that the man he had once been, restless, fearful, incomplete, had been only one part of a larger truth. Now, with shadow and light intertwined, he could walk freely through life without pretense, without striving, simply present. The world around him seemed to soften, as though acknowledging the union within. The grasses swayed with quiet rhythm, the wind hummed faintly through distant trees, and the night settled like a gentle hand upon his shoulders. Every element of the valley reflected the harmony he had reclaimed, each note of silence and sound in perfect accord with the balance within. He smiled, not from triumph, not from relief, but from gentle recognition. In the shadow, he found tenderness. In the light, clarity. In the meeting of the two, he found home. The reunion was not a moment, but a living presence, a soft, enduring integration of consciousness and compassion. And as he rose to his feet, standing at last fully, he felt the unity ripple through him. The shadow was no longer beneath him or behind him. It was within, inseparable, steady, and warm. In that quiet, complete awareness, he walked forward, carrying both candle and night, fully awake and wholly at peace. The world around him softened, the edges of reality blurring into gentle half-light. Twilight had settled fully, yet the night had not pressed forward. Instead, light lingered like a tender companion, neither insisting nor fading completely. The air held the scent of damp earth and distant flowers, a quiet perfume that seemed to whisper of patience, of waiting, of gentle presence. He walked slowly, each step cushioned by the soft grass beneath his feet. Shadows stretched and folded around him, not threatening, not distant, but intimate, like old friends who had waited quietly for him to return. The light that fell upon him was gentle now, muted by the embrace of the approaching night, creating a subtle harmony he had never felt in the brilliance of earlier days. He breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of inhalation and exhalation mirror the gentle undulation of the world around him. Inhale, the warmth of light fills him. Exhale, the cool calm of shadow settles in. Inhale, awareness. Exhale, release. Each breath carried him deeper into the quiet pulse of the evening, a meditation in movement, a lullaby in presence. In the distance, the first stars began to appear, pinpricks of silver across the indigo sky. They shimmered softly, reflecting in the folds of shadow around him and in the gentle glimmer of the remaining light. He understood then, as the narrator's voice seemed to merge with the quiet wind, that peace was not in choosing one or the other, not in fleeing darkness or chasing illumination, but in the tender meeting of both. "Where light and shadow meet," the voice murmured, warm and calm, "peace begins." The words rippled through him like soft waves, touching each corner of his being. He felt the unity of opposites settle within, the quiet depth of darkness, the gentle clarity of light, the way they wove together to form the texture of life itself. He stopped and closed his eyes, letting the half-light envelop him fully. Shadows brushed against his skin with cool tenderness, while the lingering light caressed him warmly. He was neither blinded nor lost, but present, entirely, fully, in the embrace of balance. He felt the pulse of the night, the heartbeat of the world, echoing in his own chest, steady, gentle, unhurried. The breeze carried whispers of the earth, of grasses and trees, of rivers winding silently in the distance. Everything seemed to exhale with him, and he with it, a shared rhythm of surrender and presence. In that meeting of day's warmth and night's hush, he found a stillness deeper than he had known, a sanctuary born not of absence or brilliance, but of quiet coexistence. And so he remained, walking, breathing, feeling, a soul cradled by half-light, learning that in the tender balance of shadows and glow, true peace begins, and the heart can rest, fully and wholly, in the embrace of the night. The first light of morning stretched softly across the horizon, delicate as a sigh, painting the world in muted golds and pale blues. The man stirred, not abruptly, but as one slowly waking from a long, restorative meditation. His breath was calm, steady, a gentle rhythm that mirrored the unfolding day. He rose, feeling the familiar warmth of the sun filtering through leaves and soft clouds, yet there was no urgency in the light. It moved slowly across the hills and fields, brushing the world with a tender hand, neither demanding attention nor glaring harshly. And as he stepped forward, he noticed a quiet truth that filled him with subtle wonder. His shadow, once lost, now moved naturally with him, neither apart nor feared, simply present, harmonizing with every gesture and step. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of dew on grass and the gentle aroma of distant blossoms. He inhaled deeply, feeling the breath draw the day into his being, and exhaled, letting go of the residue of dreams and old unrest. Light and shadow intertwined effortlessly, a silent dance that reflected the rhythm of his inner awakening. Birdsong began to stir in the distance, faint yet persistent, notes rising and falling like soft whispers of encouragement. Each chirp seemed to affirm what he had learned, that life is neither fully bright nor entirely shaded, but a delicate balance, and that peace comes not from perfect light alone, but from the unity of opposites. He walked slowly along the familiar path, his shadow stretching behind him in the early sun, yet feeling no separation, no imbalance. It was a companion, a reminder of all he had faced and all he had reclaimed. The warmth of the day mingled with the gentle coolness of morning shade, and he felt the harmony of existence pulse through him, steady, sustaining, and tender. Everything was familiar, yet transformed. The world seemed quieter, softer, attuned to a rhythm he had only recently remembered, the rhythm of presence, of acceptance, of being fully alive without striving or fear. He breathed in the delicate clarity of the new morning, and in that moment, he felt the integration of all that had come before: light, shadow, hope, regret, learning, and surrender, settle into a calm, unbroken whole. As he paused and looked toward the horizon, the narrator's voice murmured softly, inviting the listener to breathe along, to feel the gentle unfolding of the day, to sense the peace that arises when shadow and light walk together. Inhale warmth, exhale tension, inhale presence, exhale striving. He smiled faintly, a smile free of judgment, free of expectation. His shadow moved naturally with him, the half-light of dawn embracing both. He felt the pulse of life within, steady and unhurried, and knew, with quiet certainty, that the still light within would guide him through every day, every night, every pause between, carrying him gently toward balance, toward peace, toward the deep rest that comes when one has fully returned to oneself. The man sat beneath a solitary tree, its branches stretching wide into the pale morning sky, leaves whispering softly in the gentle breeze. The day had begun, yet it moved slowly, deliberately, as if honoring the stillness he had cultivated within. He breathed deeply, noticing the interplay of warmth and shade, light and shadow, and felt a quiet smile form on his lips. In the soft rhythm of his breath, he began to contemplate what he had learned: that light and darkness are not enemies. They are not opposing forces to be conquered or discarded, but complementary currents in the river of existence. Light is inhale, darkness is exhale, brightness is expansion, shadow is pause. Each requires the other to exist fully, to carry meaning, to hold depth. He traced his fingers along the grass, feeling the cool dampness beneath the morning sun. The warmth did not erase the chill. The shadow did not smother the brightness. Instead, the two danced together, subtle and unforced, a reminder that the fullness of life arises in harmony, not in separation. How often had he sought to banish the darkness, believing that perfection lay in unbroken illumination? And yet, in that pursuit, he had felt hollow, unsteady, as though something essential had slipped through his grasp. Now he understood. Wholeness is the meeting of opposites. It is not in the dominance of light over shadow, nor in the surrender of shadow to light, but in the tender embrace of both. Just as breath carries both inhale and exhale, presence and absence, joy and sorrow, so too does the self flourish when all its layers are acknowledged, honored, and allowed to coexist. The heart that fears darkness cannot know warmth fully. The soul that flees shadow cannot rest in the glow of life. He closed his eyes, letting the quiet of the morning settle around him and within him. He felt the pulse of his own being, steady and soft, echoing the rhythm of the world, a dance of illumination and shade, expansion and pause, arrival and release. To resist one would be to fracture the harmony. To embrace both was to be fully alive, fully present, fully whole. In that reflective stillness, he realized that light without shadow is cold, distant, unrelenting, and that shadow without light is silent, heavy, isolating. Only together could they teach him the tender lessons of existence, patience, humility, compassion, and the gentle acceptance of impermanence. Each moment carries both, each breath holds both, and in the simple recognition of this duality, he found the quiet sanctuary he had long sought. The leaves above him swayed with a rhythm that mirrored his understanding, neither dominating nor subdued, simply moving, simply being. The breeze carried faint scents of earth and life, subtle reminders that the world itself breathes in the same rhythm. He smiled softly, letting gratitude fill the spaces where fear and striving had once lived. And in the depth of that quiet reflection, he understood fully. To live wholly is to walk in balance, to honor both candle and night, to inhale light and exhale shadow. In the gentle weaving of opposites, the heart finds its natural rhythm, the mind its quiet clarity, and the soul its tender, abiding peace. Here, in the embrace of wholeness, he rested, fully awake, fully present, and ready to drift, slowly, into the serene lull of deep sleep. The world has softened now, the edges of day melting into gentle twilight. Everything breathes quietly, as if the earth itself inhales slowly, then exhales, carrying away tension, fear, and the restless noise of the waking mind. You are here, seated or lying, and your body feels the support of the ground beneath you, steady, patient, welcoming. Close your eyes. Feel the rise and fall of your chest, the subtle rhythm of your own heartbeat. Inhale, exhale, a soft tide flowing within. Steady, unhurried. Let your attention follow the gentle motion of your breath, as if it were a lantern casting light into the corners of your awareness. In your light, your shadow rests. The parts of yourself you have hidden, feared, or rejected are not absent. They are simply quiet now, embraced by your awareness. Imagine them like soft shadows settling around a candle, not threatening, not cold, but held tenderly within the glow. Each shadow carries wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. Breathe into that understanding. Exhale any lingering tension, any remnants of striving, any sense of incompleteness. And in your shadow, your peace lives. Even in darkness, there is a pulse of life, a gentle warmth, a space where the heart can rest. Let the shadow cradle you, supporting you as you release the need to control, to perform, to illuminate endlessly. Feel the tender balance of your own inner. The world around you softens, edges blurring into gentle gradients of light and shadow. The air hums quietly with stillness, carrying no urgency, only a tender invitation to rest. Feel your body settle into the surface beneath you, supported, held, embraced by the calm of the night. Breathe slowly. Inhale. Feel the warmth of your light filling your chest, your belly, your heart. Exhale. Release the tension, the small anxieties, the thoughts that have clung too tightly. Inhale, the quiet strength of your shadow, patient and steady. Exhale, allow it to mingle with your light, harmonizing, soothing, bringing completeness. Notice the rhythm of your heartbeat, gentle and unhurried. Each pulse is a reminder that you are alive, that presence itself is enough. Each inhale draws in calm. Each exhale lets go of striving. Let yourself drift deeper, guided only by the soft cadence of your own breath, moving naturally between brightness and shade, between thought and rest. Let the world fade now, the whisper suggests, soft as a breeze. Feel the edges of reality dissolve, the distant noises dim, the worries of the day slipping beyond reach. The light you carry and the shadow you have embraced rest together within you, neither dominating, neither feared. They are companions, a quiet harmony that cradles your mind, your body, your soul. Visualize yourself in a gentle landscape where soft half-light wraps around hills, trees, and rivers. Every curve, every shadow, every shimmer of light reflects the balance within you. The world itself breathes in tandem with your own rhythm, slow, deep, and tender. You are a part of this flow, a thread in the quiet tapestry of night. Inhale serenity, exhale release, inhale presence, exhale surrender. With each cycle you feel lighter, more spacious, more connected to the stillness that has always awaited you. No need to chase dreams, no need to resist. You are carried by the natural cadence of existence, anchored in the gentle balance of light and shadow. Your light and your shadow sleep together, the voice whispers, fading almost entirely, leaving only the soft resonance of quiet awareness. You feel the warmth of illumination, the depth of shadow, both coexisting without effort. In this union, you are whole. Allow the final threads of consciousness to drift away with your exhalation. Every muscle, every thought, every fleeting tension softens. The mind grows calm, the body sinks deeper. The heart beats steady in the embrace of completeness. You are whole, you are safe, you are resting. The ambient silence deepens. Light and shadow mingle softly in the vast, gentle expanse of night. Breath slows to a near whisper. Mind, body, and soul dissolve into calm. And now, drift fully, drift gently, drift into deep, restorative sleep.